For those of you joining us on your lunch hour or on a nice Friday afternoon, thank you and welcome to Revel 11. As you know, Revel 11 is a community where we inspire women to be the change they want to see in the world. We have been gathering in an online capacity for over a year now and welcoming people from all over the country and all over the world. And today's special guest is Cheryl Castleman. And I've recently gotten to know Cheryl. We share a common interest and love for sales. Both of us are veteran sales contributors, sales leaders, and have a passion for sharing with others about the power of your ask and the power of sales as a chosen profession as well. Just a little bit about Cheryl Lynn. She is a managing partner and executive coach at CGI, which is an internationally renowned sales expert. She currently serves as the Chief Learning Officer for Sistas in Sales. I love that title. It's the first national organization that serves women of color in professional sales careers. She specializes in teaching clients how to develop effective growth strategies and market models to increase productivity and revenue. She is a Minnesota-born professional, which I love. I'm also from the Midwest, and she has more than 20 years of enterprise C-level sales experience. So I know she has so much great wisdom to share. And what I love about Cheryl Lynn's approach is she makes it very conversational and very easy to help translate kind of those baby steps that we take in our journey of learning how to create an effective ask. Cheryl Lynn, I know there's a lot you want to cover today. Do you want to highlight what the audience has in store for them?
Absolutely. Thanks, Monica. I appreciate that. You know, I have been in sales since Girl Scout cookies were less than $1 a box. So I've been listening to no for a long time. So if anybody wants to count back, you'll figure out about how old I am by looking at that. But one of the things that I have done, whether I'm coaching women or in sales myself, is three things. And these are the three things that I want to focus on today. Is I want to talk about clarity. I want to be able to make sure that we're clear about what we're asking about. The second one is comfort. We have to get comfortable with no. And so not just comfortable hearing it, but one of the things that I read recently said that no is a complete sentence. And so how do we get comfortable saying no so that we're comfortable hearing no? And finally, there's this big ask. We all have this big ask in our mind. And how do we get the courage for the big ask? So one of my mentors years ago told me, Sherilyn, when you criticize somebody, you raise their defensiveness. And if you challenge somebody, you raise their game. So I'm going to tell each and every one of you today that Monica and I are going to challenge you because we want you to raise your game and we want you to get clarity around what your goals are and what you're asking, get comfortable with no, and get the courage for that big ask. And so at the end, we're going to ask you guys a little bit about what your big ask is, and we'll share some tips and ideas on how we've had to address those. So that's what we're going to talk about today, Monica, is clarity, comfort, and courage. And we're going to challenge each other and challenge our audience here.
I love how you laid that out. And I appreciate starting with clarity. We talked a little bit about, I'm a big fan of Brene Brown as well. And she always says, clarity is kindness. And I think sometimes as women, right, we couch what it is that we want and we're not always sure how to be clear because sometimes we're afraid of hurting people's feelings or we're afraid of the no or whatever that might be. So tell me a little bit about what clarity means to you and how you educate people on how to get clear about the ask.
Absolutely. So, Monica, I was talking to one of my clients last week, and she was lamenting because she had started in a sales role she's a very fairly new salesperson, and she started in the role about 6 months ago. And she started with a colleague who was a white male, and they both were selling, but she was selling circles around him. She was outselling him. She'd worked on a couple projects for her manager, and then her manager resigned. And so she was sitting there with this colleague, and they were chatting over Zoom about what are we going to do. And They were a little anxious because they were in their ramp up. And within a week, it was announced that he was now her manager. And she was furious. And she was like, I outsold him. I outled him. I did more projects than him. And when she went to the SVP to say, why did he get promoted? They said, well, he asked for it. He said he wanted the position, he wanted the job. And she was like, well, why do you think I worked so hard? And they go, but you never asked for it. And so one of the things that we have to do is we have to ask. And it's more than just asking, it's knowing why it's important to you. I have a client that I talked to, and she said, Cheryl, I don't want to be promoted. And I said, well, why do you want to be promoted? And she was saying, well, I want to provide for my children. She's a single parent and she wants to provide for her children. And that's her why. I have another client that she wants to be promoted because her sorority sister outperforms her. And she's like, I just have to beat her. She's always beat me and I want to beat her. So when I say what's important to you, what your clarity is, one of the techniques that I use is I use wish, wild wish, and fantasy. So Monica, if I said to you, what is your wish in your career? What is it that you want? You might say, what would you say?
To be successful.
Okay. And then I would say, okay, we've taken care of that. You are successful, Monica. What is your wild wish?
Hmm. To earn $1 million a year.
Okay, so now you're talking about the money. Okay, so now I've given you a realistic magic wand. You're successful, you've earned $1 million a year. What is your fantasy? If both of those had happened, what do you really want?
Really, what I want is to make a difference and
Okay,
to be able to, leave a legacy to others and my children.
okay. So that's what your desire is. So when I talk about clarity about your ask, pause for a second and ask yourself, what is it that I really want? What is it that it's important to me? I joined Sisters in Sales and I coach and train because I delight in seeing women succeed. I think that if women learn sales skills, if women learn how to ask and get comfortable with no, you can provide for your family, you can provide for your children, you can provide for your community. If you learn how to ask and you get comfortable with no. So just pause for a second and think about what it is that you really want. Do you want the promotion? Do you want the prestige? Do you want to lead? Do you want to make a difference and coach and mentor people? Do you want the salary? Doesn't matter, but get clear about what's important to you. And what we're going to talk about then is how to ask about that.
And Sherilyn, what I really like about what you did there, and I think what we want to challenge people on is often our first response isn't really the response. It's that dig a little deeper, dig a little
Right,
deeper, ask again, what do you really want? What do you really want? What do you really want? And
right,
because a lot of the time that first response is just peripheral, right? It's the surface response to be successful, right? That's pretty
right.
generic. And getting really clear and really deep. Sometimes when I go for a walk, for example, I'll say, you know what, I'm going to take this question for a walk with me today instead of listening to a podcast, right? Because when you walk, you think. And so I think really challenging people to get deep on that layer beneath the why. What is it that you want?
Right. And the other thing that I encourage people to do is something that I call box breathing. We as women, we're on the go. Okay. Between if you whether you're working from home, working at home, whether you have children or you're a spouse, it doesn't matter. We are busy. And so we get so busy that we forget what's important to us. And so, excuse me, whether it's walking or pausing, and I encourage people to do box breathing. That's where you take a breath in for the count of four. You hold it for the count of four. You blow it out for the count of four, and you hold it at the bottom of the count of four. Now, what box breathing does is it slows your heart rate, lowers your blood pressure, and it allows you to clear your brain and just think about what it is that I really want. Do I want more help in the home from my spouse, or do I want more free time for myself? Do I want to have more responsibilities at work, or do I just want to be respected at work? And so if we slow down, we can really get in touch with what's important for us. And then when we ask, we're really clear about what we're asking for.
I love that. Do we want more responsibilities at work, or do we want to be more respected at work? And sometimes we confuse that what it is that we want, and then our ask gets confused along with that, right?
Right. Absolutely. And so what you said about walking, it's like Monica said, added in the chat. What is it that, we do that allows us to slow down? For some of it's meditation, some of it's yoga. But whatever you do to center yourself, whatever you do with self-care, just stick in there. What is it that I really want? What is that big ask? What do I want to ask for? And and then once you get clarity around it, that's half the battle. And so ask for what you really desire, what you really value, and what you really want.
Great.
And so that's the first thing that I want to start with. So I want to challenge anybody in the chat to think about one thing you may have discovered just so far since we've been talking about clarity. Has anybody learned anything or anything that you thought, wow, I need to do this?
Or even a question about it that you might have. It's a process, right? It's sometimes tough to know what it is that we want and to give ourselves that permission.
Absolutely.
Safe
Okay,
box
so
breathing again.
Okay, so what box breathing is you take a deep breath in, 2, 3, 4, to the count of 4. You hold it at the top, 2, 3, 4. Then you blow out your breath, 2, 3, 4. And then you hold it at the bottom, 2, 3, 4. And once you do that, it will, even if you only do it once, it calms your chatter in your brain. It brings your blood pressure down, it brings your heart rate down, and it allows you to listen. It allows you to listen to other people better. I encourage women who are in sales and you're going in to talk to a client to just stop and do a box breathing before you start your Zoom calls. If you have the time, do it a couple times and watch what happens.
I love that because I do think it is so important to be centered, because when we go into a conversation anxious, our pitch changes, our cadence changes, and that's one of the ways we sometimes lose our power, right? Is by that voice tone and that centered confidence. And I know you're going to
Absolutely.
talk a little bit more about that. Let's see what else. I love what Monica said. Seems important to understand what we want, but also why.
Right.
Because sometimes when we're just thinking about the what and we don't take that step further to say why, we're not really clear, right? So back to that clarity. Another person said to be okay with the evolution of my ask. I love that, right? Because sometimes it changes, and sometimes as we're evolving, so does that ask.
And it's also okay. And I read this, one of my mentors years ago said, Cheryl, and you're a woman, you're entitled to change your mind. So you may ask for something and get it and say, ooh, oops, nope, that's not what I wanted. You're right. You are entitled to change your mind. You're entitled to say, I thought I wanted to be a manager. I don't want to manage people. It is okay to say, I thought I wanted, an enterprise account or a large account or the larger deals, and to change your mind. I know that I was very, very busy in sales, and my first daughter was born, and I'm telling you, she came home from the hospital sleeping through the night. I was like, I don't get it. I don't see what the big deal is. She would sleep 12 hours during the day. She would sleep through the night. I could work around her. Not a big deal. My second one was born, and she cried nonstop for 3 years. And I decided after her first 6 months that I was going to take a year off. I changed my mind. I didn't want to be a working mom with a baby that was just constantly crying. She was hypersensitive. I mean, the light would come on and she would cry. I changed my mind. I changed my path. I took a year off, helped settle her down. I worked part-time until she was 3, and then I went back to selling full-time. But I changed my mind, and I had to take it all back when I said I don't get the big deal about working moms because my first one was so easy. Um, but it's, we get to change our mind.
That's great. That's a great learning. Okay. Anything else you want to add about clarity?
So I love what Yvonne wrote here. I have a colleague who is an attorney, and she wanted to work part-time because her children were home. And the job that she applied for was a full-time position. And she was a top candidate. And when they went to make the offer, so she said, that's fine, but you have to make it part-time. And they're like, no, 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 you don't understand. It's a full-time position. She's like, I understand it's full-time, and I am the person for this job. I'm the best person for the job. And the position is going to be part-time. And they just went back and forth. And finally, they were like, well, okay, we'll make it part time. And the position was part time for 5 years until her child went off to kindergarten. And then she went back and said, okay, now we can make it full time. Um, but she was very clear after she had interviewed, and they had said, you are the top candidate. We love what you do. And they made it a part time position. Um, but because she asked for it. So
And
absolutely, Yvonne.
she was clear about what she wanted. She wanted the job and she wanted it to be part-time. So she created the
Right.
rules, right? She
Yes,
created the rules.
absolutely. And she didn't apologize. And that's something else that I think that that kind of leads us to the comfort of no. Is as women, a lot of times when we say no, we'll say, no, because of this, or no, I can't do it because of this. She didn't say, no, I have to have a part-time position because my kids are at home and I want to work from home. She was just like, I'm your person, I'm the best person, and it's a part-time position. Period. It's just a part-time position. And so no is a complete sentence. And so let's talk a little bit about no, Monica.
Yeah, I would
Um,
love to.
so I'm going to ask you, tell me about the toughest no that you've ever had to say.
Oh, there are so many. I think the toughest no is when I had to decline an opportunity for a promotion because it wasn't right for me. And I was drawn because, who doesn't want that promotion and more money and more recognition? And also there were people that I wanted to help and things I wanted to do. But at the same time, I knew I wasn't in a personal circumstance where I could say yes to that and balance both.
Yeah, and I had a similar story. I There was a position I applied for, and on paper it was like the ideal job, and I loved it. I interviewed with the entire hiring team and the executive team, and everything was fine. It was a great fit, and then I met the head of the board, and the head of the board was very hands-on in almost the day-to-day activities, very old school. And when they offered me the position, I realized I didn't want to work for him. This was not a role. This was not, I didn't want somebody kind of micromanaging from the board. And I was very uncomfortable with it. And it was a struggle because I wanted that position, but it didn't align with what was important to me. And so I said no. And so when I talk about no, here's what I'm going to challenge you to do. I want you to get in the habit of hearing no. And when I was early in my career, one of the things that I learned to do was ask every day and get in the habit of hearing no. So I would go into the store with my mom, and I was a young adult and I was feeling very good about my income. And I took my mom shopping for a new outfit, and they put the outfit on the counter, major retailer. And I said, oh, can I get a discount on this? I thought my mom was going to crawl under the counter. She was horrified, but I was practicing listening for no. They didn't say no. They were like, sure, we guess if you pay cash, we'll give you a 10% discount. I got a discount. I traveled at the time. Every time I would get on a plane, I'd ask for an upgrade back when flight attendants and gate agents had that authority. Every time I flew, I'd ask for an upgrade. To this day, every time I check into a hotel, I ask for an upgrade. Do you know what happens if you ask for an upgrade every time you check into an hotel? One of two things happens. Either they say no and they give you the room you were booked for, or you get a great room. I mean, and so I challenge you to just get in the habit throughout your day of just start asking for all kinds of things, so that when people tell you no, it doesn't mean anything. It's just no. You want to get to the point that you say thank you for the no.
I love that. And we've had a lot of conversation about no and about this concept of, actually wanting to hear no, because statistically, there is a ratio between hearing no and yes. So many times in my sales career, when I would hear no, I would celebrate it. I'd be like, hooray, I just heard another no. Hooray, I just heard my fifth no. That means a yes is around the corner, because
Right.
statistically, there's a law of averages with your asks. And if you're only asking twice versus asking 20 times, you're not going to hear the yes as often if
Right.
you're not also hearing the no. They're part of the journey. Both of them are part of the journey. I think another story that comes to mind is one where a retail agent was talking about how they were taking a customer shopping and putting out clothes and saying, this would look good, this would look good. And he was very proud of himself because the customer was saying yes to all the upgrades in clothing, and his manager was watching him, and he was thinking, I'm going to get praised. And at the end of the sale, he went to the manager for feedback, and the manager said, you never heard no. And he's like, well, isn't that a good thing? The customer said yes to everything
Right.
I offered. And he said, but you decided what that customer's limit of purchasing was. They didn't decide, you decided. So
Right.
you stepped back before hearing the no. Who knows what else they would have said yes to? And that really stuck with me, that, unless you hear no, you're not really selling. You're just taking orders, right? And how do you know what the boundaries or the comfort levels are if you're not asking?
Absolutely. And so you're right. Every no, it's a law of abundance.
Right.
Every no gets you closer to their yes. And so whether you're asking a friend to pick up your kids after school, you know, or you're asking for that raise, or you're asking for the promotion, or you're asking for a divorce, or you're asking for help with the housework, it doesn't matter. Or, as we talked about, you're asking your grown children, it's time to move out of the house. Every single time you ask, you're getting closer when you get a no. And in sales, I always trained my team that you have to ask until you get 7 no's. Because most no's, people are really saying, I need more information, or they're saying, I don't understand. Um, or they may be just saying no, and I will ask again a different way. And so sometimes, my daughters I have 2 daughters, and they're grown, and they'll get embarrassed and say, Mom, she told you no 4 times. And I was like, yeah, but it wasn't 7. So I just, no just rolls off my back, and I really don't hear it. And
Well, and
so
sometimes no means not right now, right?
true.
It's just not the right time. I can't tell you, Sherilyn, how many times I was in a sales role with a known customer that I knew very well, and I would pitch a product and they would say no. And then I would go back a month later, pitch it, they'd say no. And I'd go back again and they'd say, oh, you have that product? It's like they don't even
Right.
remember what they've said no to, but I did, right? And so I kind of had to lose that memory and just say, if you're doing it in a way that's respectful, and let's
Right.
talk about that a little bit, the respectful ask versus, the pushy ask, right?
Right. Yeah. And so I talk about solutioning with clients. I don't sell with clients, I solution. And so if we have talked about what your pain is, and we know what the solution is, and we're solutioning together, I may not have presented the solution in a way that you're ready to connect with me and purchase it, but I'll come back and reposition it. We're solutioning, we're partnering. And so I don't call it selling. It is solutioning. And it is about getting to the yes and just being comfortable with the no. And if you want to be kind, add a thank you after it. It's okay to say no, thank you. You don't have to just say no, but that's about as far as I go with no. It's just, oh no, thank you. Um, and being comfortable saying that, and being comfortable asking. One of the things, Monica, I remember that we talked about is it's called the I forget, but it's like, you want to ask somebody for somebody, and you call them up and you say, hi, how are you? How was your week? We haven't chatted in a while. And you chit chat and chit chat, and they go, oh, it was great talking to you. And we talked for 15 minutes. And right before they hang up, you go, oh, by the way, I just want to ask you, can you pick up my kids? Well, that's the real reason why you called. So if you're comfortable with the no, you call somebody and you make the ask, and you just get it out there. You just ask. If they say no, you're closer to finding somebody else to pick up the kids. If you ask for a promotion and your boss says no, well, then you either find out what you need to do to move forward to get it, or you go work someplace else if you can't get promoted with that company. So, but it gets you closer to the yes when you get your no.
Well, and what you said about that example, I think is really important, and that's it. That's really the transparency, and it's the clarity, and it's the kindness in that equation. So, if I'm calling a friend to ask for something, I'll often say, "Hey, I know it's been a while since we caught up, and I do want to catch up with you." But first, I have a question to ask you. I'm in a little bit of a bind on Friday. Is there any way you could pick up my son? And okay, then we cover that and then we go into catching up. And I think we've all been on the receiving end of those calls, right? Where
Right.
somebody's chit chatting with us and then they say, oh, and by the way, I need X. And you feel like, wait a minute, was this conversation not authentic? But by you bringing the ask up to the forefront, it allows you to have authentic connection afterwards. And that's why I think it's really important not to couch that ask, right?
Right.
Not to try and get the ask on the back of a friendship, but on the forefront. And I
Right.
think that's also the difference between making it personal or not, right? It doesn't need to be personal. Talk a little bit about how we sometimes personalize no, and so we hold back on asking. And I love your LinkedIn example of saying hi.
So, about 2 years ago, when I started writing and coaching and presenting, I had about 40 connections on LinkedIn. And I went to a LinkedIn workshop where you rated yourself and you scored yourself, and the possible score was 500. So at 40, they said I was invisible. I had been in sales all of my life. I had sold $100 million deals, but I was invisible on LinkedIn. And so what I had to get comfortable doing was connecting with people on LinkedIn. And what I started saying to myself is, it's just like saying hello. So when I lived in Europe, every time you went into a shop, you said guten tag. You said hello. Every time you saw somebody on the street, you said hello. You didn't say, oh, do I say hello to them? Will they not say hello to me? So I started looking at LinkedIn as just saying hello. So I would say, hi, I'm Cheryl Lynn. I'm Chief Learning Officer for Systems Sales. I'd love to connect with you. I'd love to hear your story. I don't care if they connect, don't connect. I'm just saying hello. So I started looking at social media as a way to just say hello. Um, and so I didn't personalize it if they didn't connect back. I didn't personalize it if they didn't send a message back. I was just saying hello. And I look at asking and know the same way. So when somebody says no, I don't process it and say, oh, I wonder if that means they don't like me. Or I wonder if that means they don't like my kids. Or I wonder if that means I'm not good enough to be a manager. It is just no. It doesn't. It doesn't matter what somebody is. It doesn't matter why somebody is saying it. I don't worry about it. I don't process it. It's just no. Okay, I'm going on to the next one. Now, one of the things that I do encourage people to do is what I call an energy exchange. So if there's something that you want and you know that somebody else has something else, I will do something called an energy exchange. So somebody will call me and say, Sherilyn, I need coaching, but I really can't afford your coaching. And so I will say to them, instead of saying no, I will ask for an energy exchange. Well, what do you have to exchange? So my yoga instructor does my yoga videos, and I coach her on how to build a yoga practice. My editor, who edits my blog posts, I coach, she edits. I had a girlfriend when I was a single mom and I was younger. I would pick her kids up every Tuesday from school and feed them dinner, do their homework, bathe them, put them in their jammies. With my daughter, she would pick them up and take her kids home. And then Friday, she wanted to have a social life. I picked her kids up from school every Friday and did the same thing. It was an energy exchange. So sometimes if you really want something and you want to work with somebody, it's okay to say, how about we work on an energy exchange for that? So it's not a no, but you're giving somebody an opportunity to say yes.
I think that's great. And we also talked about the example of, think about if you're, going through a drive-through, and I can't even remember the last time I've been through a drive-through, and they say, do you want to supersize your fries? And you say no. They're like, oh, they don't, she said no to me, they're like, okay, next,
Right.
next,
Right.
next, next, right?
Right.
It's
That's
just,
it.
it's
Yeah.
just that simple. It's just like yes or no, next, next.
Yeah. And
And
that's why and that's why I'm sorry, I encourage people to ask. Just come up with, just stop for a second, and I'm going to go into the chat box here. Think about something that is every day that we don't think about that we could ask for. And you want to ask for it almost like, do you want fries with that? That they may say no, but if they say yes, that's great. So like I said, for me, it was getting an upgrade when I was a road warrior and I was traveling all the time. I would never check into a hotel without saying, can I get an upgrade? To me, it was like saying, do you want fries with that? They might say
so
no, they might say yes. What are some things that you do throughout the day that you can start asking so that you start hearing no and you get comfortable with it? What were you going to say, Monica?
no, I think that's great. So what you're recommending is just to practice more asks in
Right.
order to get comfortable with no.
Yes.
So you can't think your way out of personalizing the no. You just have to experience it more so that it doesn't become such a challenge.
Right. And so when you get, so the first time you ask for an upgrade in a hotel, you may be standing there going, oh, this is really hard. What are they going to say? But imagine if every week you ask for an upgrade, because every week you're in a hotel. So where else could you ask for something? You could ask for a free dessert every time you go to a restaurant. Just ask. Okay. What else could you do? What are some things that we do on a daily basis or once a week that you could ask for, just to get in the habit of asking? Asking somebody to walk your dog, asking for a different table. That's another one. Always ask for a different table at the restaurant, just out of curiosity, just to get in the habit of doing it. That's a great one.
I have to tell you, my husband does that all the time and I would cringe, but now I'm like, this is great. We're going to get a good table. Ask for my sales engineer to set my meetings. Oh, I love that.
That's a great
Delegating.
one. Yes, delegating is another great one. I have a client she was telling me that prior to the pandemic, she only met with her sales managers on Mondays and Fridays. He never wanted to meet with her Tuesday, Wednesdays, and Thursdays. Now, since the pandemic, he was meeting with her every single day. And she's like, I can't get any work done. And she was lamenting. And I was like, so what could you do? And she goes, you know what? I could ask him not to book meetings with me on Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays. She texted me back 15 minutes later and said, he said yes. And so it's just like, what can you ask? And so I think that kind of takes us to, um, um, and you're right. We people, like I said, people will cringe when they hear people ask. But you know what? The first time you get a room with an ocean view and a second level, and two TVs, because you asked and it doesn't cost you a dime, you'll start asking.
Yeah. And I will say two other things. One is that if you ask and they say no, you are no worse off. You are in exactly the same place. So if you can just consciously think about that you're no worse off for asking than where you already are, but you could be better off, would be important. The other thing that I've asked for recently in my meetings is to shorten the meetings to 45 minutes instead of an hour. So I have those 15-minute breaks in between. That's been a great ask for me, and it's been an easy one and productive. Asking for a replay of this. You will get a replay. It's all being recorded. I love this. At happy hour, ask the bartender what special drink they're trying out. And a bartender gave us a free one, and we get a free trial just by asking. Cheers. I love that. It's Friday afternoon.
Those are great. Yes. Those are great asks. And so it just goes back for people that were arriving late. We talked about clarity, getting clarity about what you really want, what your desire is. The second one was comfort. I want you guys to get comfortable with the word no. We want to depersonalize it. It's not about me personally. You probably don't even know me. And I ask with a smile. I walk into a hotel and I smile and I ask about them. And I just say, can I get a room? Can I get an upgrade? Um, or another ask I have, if I walk in and it's a hotel that I have a profile and they've upgraded me, I ask for free breakfast. Can I get breakfast? They might say yes, they might say no. It is no skin off of that clerk's back to hand me a free breakfast coupon. And I've learned that. So it's just ask.
That's great. All right, tell us about the third one.
The third one is courage. So what we want to talk about is that big ask. We're all sitting here now thinking about that big ask. And like I said, for some of us, we have all had it. We have had that big ask where you ask somebody to end a relationship. You may need to ask your grown children to move back out of the house. Maybe they moved back into the home because of the pandemic. And now that we're reimagining and reinventing and coming out of it, is it time to ask somebody to move out? Is it time to ask somebody to leave your team? Is it time to ask for that promotion or that raise? So, what I'd like to challenge people is, does somebody have a big ask that they feel comfortable dropping in the chat? And Monica and I can talk a little bit about how we have approached a big ask like that or how we might approach it. Does anybody have the courage, first of all, to post their big ask in the chat? And what we want to talk about is, how do you get the courage to go after those big asks? So you've done the work now. You've practiced the no. You're ready for the no. You know exactly what you want. You're gotten very clear about why you want it. You know what you deserve, and now you're going after your big ask.
And another example could be maybe everyone is returning to work and you want to continue to work from home or in a hybrid model, right? There's a lot of different considerations. And I think, especially right now, employers are more sensitive and more open to their employee asks. So I think it's a great time to think about, what is that big ask that I've been wanting and am not necessarily sure? Okay, great, Mary Ann. Oh, that's so nice. She appreciated the survey from Rebel 11 and us asking what the attendees want. I agree. Rebel 11 is a great role model for that. Anybody else with an ask? Okay, maybe let's start with the simple one then. Should we start with the simple one?
Yes. So one of the things that I think that a lot of us have had to struggle with is a raise. How do you go about asking for a raise? So the three things that I think are important when you ask for the raise. So the first one is that you've done your homework. You know what the market salary is. You have done your research, and you know what you want. The second one is, you are clear with yourself about why you want it, and you've taken the time to demonstrate your value. So one of the things that I encourage women to do is keep your greatest hits list. In my phone, in my notes, I jot down all the successes that I've had throughout my life. And if you don't have your successes listed, one of the ways to start your greatest hits is to send an email out to 5 friends or colleagues and say, tell me 3 things that I do well, and tell me one memorable positive thing that we've done. And you're going to get all these great love emails back from your friends. Take that, paste it into your notes, and that's what you start as your greatest hits. So before you go in and ask for a promotion, you want to make sure that you've thought about what value you have brought to the company. What value have you brought to the position? What have you done in addition to doing your job? So what is the justification for this raise? And then you make your ask. And it's not, I'm asking because my children are growing and they need more money. It is, I am driving value. I am valued here, and I want to be compensated accordingly. So those are the 3 things that I look at when I go and ask for a raise.
Now, I want to
Monica?
add something to that because I think this is
Okay.
very important. And I just counseled someone through this process who had great success. So when you ask for a raise, I love what you said about first showing, here is what I've contributed. Here's what I continue to plan to contribute. Here's, the 5 things I'm going to be working on over the next 90 days, whatever that
Right.
looks like. Here's my value. Here's the market value. Here's why, all the data points leading up to that. But then here's where people typically mess up. They've done all that work. They've done all that research. They have it all prepared. And they get in the meeting and they're nervous because they're asking for more money. Oh, it's so nerve wracking. And so what do? They keep talking. They keep talking. They don't ask their question and then stop. When you ask an important question, you pause. You don't keep talking. In any negotiation, any ask, any whatever that might be. The other important thing, and this is what I counseled this person on, I said, don't ask for the amount. Let them show you what you're valued, because typically you're going to ask for less than what they might give you. And this person came back to me and said, when I asked, I did what you said. I was quiet. My boss said, I need some time to think about it and I'll get back to you. I didn't argue. I stayed quiet. I stayed comfortable and confident. 48 hours later, the boss came back with a raise twice what that individual was going to ask for, twice the amount of what that individual was going to ask for. So they really felt, by staying silent and confident, and by not putting the amount out there, but letting the employer put the amount out there. And then, I want to know what else happened? That person said, I'm going to work 10 times harder and be 10 times more loyal, because they felt so valued, but they were really
Right.
clear about their why. And then they were quiet after their ask. I love that.
Yeah, no, I love that. And in sales, we always said the first one to speak after the ask loses. And we got to be quiet. We have to be comfortable with that silence. It is okay to ask and say, I'd like a raise, and I'd like you to put an amount on the table, like you said, and then totally silent and let them sit there in their discomfort. And that's okay. Another thing that I encourage people to do is, when they're negotiating a salary for a position that, once you've applied for a position, it doesn't matter when they make that offer. It doesn't matter the amount they put on the table. Whatever amount they put on the table, you pause. I don't care if inside you're screaming, oh my gosh, that's more money than I ever thought I'd make. You just pause. And once you pause, you say, let me think about this. I appreciate the offer, and I'll get back to you. And sleep overnight on it, and then ask for one thing more. I don't care if you ask for one more vacation day. I don't care if you ask for work from home one day a week. Just ask for one thing more is what I encourage people to do. And it's okay if they say no. You want to negotiate. And so I love that she got double the salary. That is phenomenal. I know that someone marked in here the 3 things that I've done well, and what was the other part. So when you send the email to your friends or your colleagues, ask them to tell you, what are 3 things that you do well? What are 3 strengths that you have? And one positive, memorable experience they have from with you. And they will remind you about the time you guys went to dinner together, or the time, you complimented them on, or the deal that you closed together. And they remind you about a success that you've had with them. And that's what you want to put in your greatest hits. That's what you want to put in your phone to remind yourself some amazing things that you've done. And it also makes for a wonderful week when those emails start coming back in.
I love that. What's another common ask that people often want your help with?
A big ask is, again, around your children. A lot of times people will say, I had a client that she was just exhausted, and and I asked her, I said, well, tell me a little bit about what you want and what's going on. And she had 3 preteen teenage kids, and she still did the laundry for all of them. Now, Dawn has put in a message. She'd like to ask her spouse to get a job because freelance isn't cutting it financially. So that is a big ask. So let's talk about Dawn's here for a second. So Dawn, when you think about, the first thing that I would say is, what does success look like? So is it a regular paycheck? Is there a certain amount? So again, get clarity about what your ask is. So is it, I need you to bring in X amount a week, X amount a month? Is it, so what is that ask very clearly? What do you think, Monica?
I agree. I think part of the problem is sometimes we're not clear and we focus on what's on the surface. So maybe it's that we're frustrated because our partner isn't bringing in as much money or isn't helping with the household responsibilities. And so it's also easy to sometimes approach it when at the moment when you're frustrated. So I think one of my tips in that situation is if there's something that doesn't feel, especially in a relationship, that is being addressed and it's a hard topic to address, because maybe you're sensitive to, gosh, I bet they would be working more if they could or were able to
Mhm.
get clients, or I bet, I don't want to make them feel X, Y, or Z. I think we've got to take the personalization out of it and speak to the facts, and also select a time when it can be on neutral ground and set them up for the conversation. I will say sometimes what I've said to people is, you know, I I, I need to have a difficult conversation with you. And often just starting that language off with it's going to be a difficult conversation. It's not easy for me because I understand that maybe X, Y, and Z has happened that has led us to this place.
Right.
However, here's where we are today, and here is where I'd like us to be tomorrow. How can we get there? Can
Right.
we have a conversation? Can we collaborate? Inviting them to the equation. If it's a partner and you're trying to get to, let's say, a different place financially or work-wise. Now, if you're the parent and it's a child, it's a little bit different story. It's, you know what, you're 16 years old and I expect you to do your laundry. It can be a whole different dynamic. But I think what's interesting is behind that, the guilt. Like, why do we feel guilty for asking for help? And so that's where I would probably go with myself, and first understanding why it's hard for me.
So, and I love what you said about where do we want to go, and so that's what I would start with. So, with my 16-year-old with the laundry, I would say, so how do you want to be seen as a 16-year-old? What does it look like that you want? To my spouse, I would say, you've been freelancing for a while. What does success look like for you? What do you want to be able to do? What's important? And understand what their goal is. There's something called the GROW model, which I use frequently, and I encourage my clients to use it with their children, their spouses, or even people that report to them. And that is the GROW model stands for goal. What is your goal? Have your spouse talk about what's important to them. The next one is, what is the reality? So you started this business so that you could get 10 clients. You started this business so you could bring in $10,000, or you started this business so that you could develop your creativity. So what's your reality? Where are you right now? So the reality is you're not doing the income, you don't have the clients, or you're not doing your creativity. And then that's for the R. The O is, what are your options? What can you do? So instead of you solving, just remind them. So if they started a freelance because they wanted to contribute to the home and they're not able to. So then you say, what can you do? What are those options? And then the final question, which is a W, is what will you do? So you came up with all of these different options, but what are you really committed to doing? And then when will you do it? So one of the things that I said to my 16-year-old about the laundry was, okay, my 16-year-old says, she said, and I quote, I'm a grown woman. Okay. And I said, okay, as a grown woman, what does that look like to you? And so she was rattled off what it looked like to her. So what is your reality? So, and she goes through it, and I said, well, can I add something to that? So the reality is the laundry's not getting done. Okay, that's part of it. And so grow is, and then, so what are some options that will help you feel more like a grown woman? Well, I guess I could do my laundry. So, so what will you do? So how about on Saturday, we talk about how you do that? And so it is getting people to move towards their goals, which helps them feel empowered, whether they're a child or a spouse or a colleague, is part of that ask.
I love that grow model, and Rev 11 put it in the chat. I appreciate that. And I think what's so great about that and about all of your work and all of this conversation today is that you approach the angle of the power of your ask with respect, right? You're not approaching it as you're not doing this, or I deserve that, or I want this, or you're not that, right? It's not this finger pointing. It's not this blaming. It's a very, you know, mature, stepping back, taking a look, looking at the facts, looking at where you are today and where you want to go and how to get there. And it's a process. And sometimes it's going to go really well, and sometimes it's not. And that's okay. It's practice. I often say the reason why I was so successful in sales is because I had so many lost deals. And it's so true. I think I lost more RFPs than anyone, but
I don't know.
but I also
Yeah,
won a ton, right? Because it's a batting average. And I think so often we're in the corner and we're not putting ourselves out there enough. And so we're not getting what we want. So sometimes the power of the ask is just about, you know, upping the count. It's a numbers
right.
game. It's a numbers game, right?
It is. And
What,
the other thing, yeah,
go
yeah,
ahead.
the no, I'm sorry. The other quick tip I have is I also encourage everybody what I call well and better. So if you ask and it didn't go well, then you just say, well, what did I do well in that ask and what could I have done better? And if every time you do a big ask, whether it's with your spouse or with your kids or at work, if you didn't get the raise, just say to yourself, okay, what did I do well in that conversation? You know, Monica said I should be quiet. I was quiet. I didn't put the amount on the table. I did these things, but it didn't go well. So what could I have done better? And if you get in the habit of asking yourself, what did I do well? What could I do better? You do start improving and getting better, and your access, you start hearing more yeses. I want to go back to the question somebody said, well, what do you do if they say, well, how much do you want? And you say, what I say is, I know that this company is about fair and equitable pay. And I just want to make sure that that is what's put on the table. And I know that you know what is fair and you know what is equitable. And I will, so why don't we start with your fair and equitable proposal?
I
And
love
I
that.
still don't give a number.
I
If
love
they
that.
ask me again, the second thing I say is, you know what the band is, you know what the salary band is for this position, you know what I've contributed, put amount on the table within the salary band that you think is that demonstrates my value to the company. And
And
then
then,
I'm
and
quiet.
then we can have a conversation about it, right?
Right.
Just because they ask doesn't mean you have to answer, which I,
Right.
again, we're so conditioned, a little bit of people pleaser innately in us that, oh, they ask, so I have to answer. No, you don't. You don't. There's a great question I want to answer before we close today from Andrea about the nonprofit sector. And I think she asked a great question about advice for asking friends for donations. And that can be tough. Um, and she said she's comfortable asking for help, but sometimes it feels like it can cross a line when you're asking friends for donations. Any suggestions?
So again, I believe that if you are passionate about your nonprofit organization and you are about solving problems, asking people to help you solve a problem is okay. So it is okay to say, you know, that I am really passionate about this battered women's shelter. I think that women need safe places to live. And I am asking everybody I know to help me on my mission to make sure women have a safe place to live. And I would ask, you are about solutions. And so if you are passionate and you're about solutioning, asking people to help you with your solution is fine. I think that's a great thing. But if you're not passionate about it, then you shouldn't be asking. And so it is just, just share your passion and what and how important it is that they can join you in your passion.
I agree. And something I just say to friends sometimes when I'm asking them to support me in something is I'll say, hey, I'm doing something new. Part of it is fundraising. There's really three ways you can support me. One, you can write a check. That's great. That's
Right.
absolutely what I'm looking for. Because again, I want to be transparent. Two, you can just learn more about what I'm doing and cheer me on. Or three, maybe you have somebody you know that you might want to refer me to. And wherever you land, that's okay. And people love that because then they don't feel like they have to tell me no. They feel like they can fall in one of those three buckets, writing a check,
Right.
cheering me on, or referring me. And I typically get something out of it that I want to. And I'm not making them feel guilty in that process. And I'm giving them a place to fit in. I used to say to my clients all the time when I was in sales, you know what? The first thing I want you to know is that you always have permission to tell me no, because sometimes people don't want to engage because they're afraid of telling you no,
Right.
which is so comical to me. But so I always say, you have permission to tell me no, but first, I just love an audience with you. I just love an audience with you. And so, you're taking that monkey off their back of, oh my gosh, am I going to have to tell them no? That keeps them from being in conversation. And then somebody asked a question about, do you even do this salary negotiation with a new job? And the answer is yes,
Absolutely.
absolutely yes.
Yes, absolutely, especially with the new job, because you are setting the expectation for future salary negotiations. So how you negotiate that salary when they first make the offer is the same way you're going to negotiate when you get promoted or when you ask for a raise. So you are actually teaching your hiring manager how you're going to deal with salary moving forward. And real quickly to Angie about her 3 young grandchildren. So I raised my kids, and mine was not as soon as. Okay, I didn't tell my kids no. So when my 16-year-old daughter says, "Mommy, can I drive the car?" I know, and I would say yes as soon as you're paying the car note. With the young kids, and they say, "Can I have a cookie now?" And I would say, as soon as you've eaten all your broccoli after dinner, you can have a cookie. So sometimes with young kids, rather than saying no, I say as soon as the playroom is cleaned up, we can have dinner, and then you can have this. And so, I would say as soon as you have been outside and ridden your bike around the block 6 times, you can have 30 minutes on the TV. I just never said no. I just told my kids as soon as.
Great. Well, we are at the end of time. I could talk to you all day long, Cheryl, and this has been so much fun. We're going to send out a recording. We're also going to send out some notes on where you can find Cheryl, how you can learn more about what she's up to and work with her. I want to turn it over to Monica Smith. Monica, do you want to tell us what's coming up